I've always found crossovers as a whole incredibly cool, and thinking of how one character would cross over into another game or medium entirely has been one of the main things I waste way too much of my life thinking about. But I've actually been thinking about doing something productive for society for once. Oh, I know. I should force myself to research, design, and illustrate entire Smash movesets for League of Legends characters. So, League and Smash, huh? A sentence that makes no sense if you don't know the abbreviations for each game. I remember that at one point in the endless cycle of Smash Ultimate DLC speculation, there were leaks and actual discussions of a League character making it in. So the idea isn't completely unheard of, but where do we start? Well, League has a few characters to pull from, but I thought it'd be most fitting to start with the character that everyone speculating years ago thought would be repping League in Smash Bros. Oh, but first, I didn't want this video to take forever, so I'll only be sketching the moves. If I was talking about just one character, then maybe, but I'm talking about multiple here. Anyway, carry on. Ahri seems fairly straightforward, except for an obvious but troublesome gimmick. Let's start basic though. Normal and Smash attacks could use some combination of her auto attack projectiles, slaps, or tail slaps. Her Q for League is a very clear choice for her neutral B. Putting the big projectile on neutral B is very common, but for Ahri it also functions like a boomerang, which is unique among orbular projectiles. I could make it deal more damage coming back too, to reflect how Ahri's Q does true damage when coming back. Next would be down B. I'm skipping side B, you'll see why later. This will be based on Ahri's W. The way the fire would function would actually be a bit different from League. It'd stick around and hurt enemies who get hit by it, which would take away one of the Foxfire for each hit. A bit more like Mega Man's Leaf Shield, although a whole lot less shieldy because it wouldn't flinch enemies, just do some damage. If you press down B again, while you already have some of the Foxfire left, it'll shoot out the remaining fire ahead of you a short distance. But whenever you do an attack, it'd fire out one of the Foxfire with it, homing in on nearby enemies. This combines Ahri's W with that one random homing projectile from her ult. Speaking of which, I'm actually gonna say that up B is the one that should take after her ult in League. Ahri's ult is already not very ultimate, so just having it as a normal move should be fine. I was thinking it'd be just like your typical aimable up B like Fox's or Sephiroth's. It wouldn't have the homing projectile from League by default, that's a part of the W already. The up B would be fairly quick and short, you could do it up to 3 times without having to land, and it's just Sora's side B without the homing. Just take Sora's move and make it blue. So side B, this is where the gimmick happens. Side B will be Ahri's E, Charm. It wouldn't work like it does in League because that would not be fun. Plus, it's pretty rare to see a character introduce a brand new status effect without it appearing elsewhere. The solution to both of these is that Charm would reverse your controls, like the evil mushroom thing, rather than simply charming you. It only swaps left and right, but that effectively accomplishes the same thing that Charm would otherwise. I think it could also slow down the movement of opponents hit by it, since that's a pretty major part of Charm in League. For balancing reasons, you shouldn't be able to charm opponents all the time obviously, so Charm would be hard to land and last just barely long enough to start a combo off of it. However, that's barely a gimmick if it's just the one move, so Ahri's actual gimmick would be her passive. If fighting game and RPG characters can get core aspects of their genres in Smash, why wouldn't a MOBA character get a passive? Ahri's passive would combine her charm with her life-stealing effect. Since her main thing isn't just being overly seductive, it's also taking the souls from the innocents. So to combine them, getting a combo string off on an opponent will slowly fill up a heart gauge, a bit like Evelyn. This heart could either appear over the character itself or over the percentage on the UI. Either way, when it's full, Ahri will heal a small percentage when she lands a special move on that opponent, and her side B will no longer just swap controls, it will actually stun. As for everything else with the character, it'd kind of be the same for each champ, so I won't really go over it for each one. The stage would probably just be Summoner's Rift inspired, no matter who it is. Maybe Howling Abyss for a Freljord champ. And music is probably some character themes, some music from the bands, maybe some Arcane tracks if we're lucky. Alt colors aren't really something I'll go too much in depth for either. I don't imagine any costumes from League will carry over into alternate costumes in Smash, except for maybe KDA Ahri's
Ahri since KDA was incredibly popular, although ironically that's the only Ahri costume that could get away with being an alternate color.
Oh yeah, and Final Smash. It'd probably just be a cutscene Final Smash that started with a big dash across the screen and then a whole lot of foxfire that she throws out, and then she steals your soul and it does a ton of damage.
But overall, Ahri's pretty basic. She even appears in the fighting game being worked on, Project L, although I didn't take any inspiration from that because all of her gameplay shown is just her throwing out fire and dashing back and forth. However, it's a lot more interesting to challenge myself a bit. So what about
Rell? Yeah, sorry. She still exists in my eyes.
Mostly because I'm a Rell main, if you wanted any more reason to dislike me. But she's a support, so it provides an interesting challenge. Thankfully though, we can't actually take after her moveset in League that often, because most of her moves can't translate that well. Which works out because Rell's getting a rework at some point,
Since she's apparently not fun or something. We'll have to start with her gimmick because it's pretty important to the rest of everything that she does.
She's a stance change character. She changes between riding and armored. Hey, so quirky thing. I found out after recording the audio that there are official names for Rell's two stances. Yeah, quite the Rell main I am. Just go back to pretending you never knew that, because I got armored correct, but I referred to her other mode as riding mode the entire rest of the video. Yeah, sorry about that. When she's riding, she moves faster generally, and when she's armored, she's more defensive.
Also, Rell would be a heavyweight in both forms, but her armored form would make her heavier and maybe give her some slight super armor.
Of course, in riding mode, she'd be a lot faster. I imagine that'd just be her attacks being faster and maybe her horizontal movement. I think in both forms, her vertical movement would not be that great.
In terms of normal attacks, just a lot of lance attacks. You could have her tilts just swing the lance and the smash attacks stab it. The stab ones would have a sweet spot at the tip, pretty straightforward.
Maybe her F smash could take after her Q and do a ton of shield damage.
But no big surprises. Except, wait, there are surprises. Her B moves.
Her down B would actually be fairly simple. It'd switch her from riding mode to armored mode. And when you switch, it'd place down a totem of armor on the ground, because there's a lot of horse there, but not a lot of armor. So we can fudge it and say that the rest is left on the field, which comes in for the second part of this down B. If you use down B in armored mode, it'll act like her E from League. Her E relies on there being an ally, so in Smash, her ally would be the totem she places down on the field. If you use that move while the totem is out, it snaps the binding between Rell and the totem, which is just a huge hitbox between them. It wouldn't stun like it does in League because it's far too easy to land for that to be balanced. It'd just do a decent amount of damage and knockback, but it'd do a ton of shield damage, and so Rell's whole thing is sort of doing a lot of shield damage and maybe getting a shield break to sort of emulate her style in League. As for switching back to riding mode, you have to use her side B. Side B takes after her W from League, where in riding mode, you'd sort of lunge forward and switch into armored mode, and the totem would be left where you started the move. Similar case with up B, Rell would just jump off of her horse, switching into armored mode and leaving a totem where she started the move. Up B wouldn't do damage though.
In armored mode, side B makes her stab her lance ahead of her, swipe upwards, tossing enemies up, and switching back into riding mode. Switching to riding mode gets rid of her current totem, obviously.
And up B would be like your typical tether recovery. I imagine the tether wouldn't go very far, but Rell would do a little hop, like Joker does. Of course, this means it's a bit difficult to stay in riding mode, but I imagine riding would rely a whole lot on the normal attacks regardless, while armored mode relies a lot more on the special attacks. Last up is neutral B, which doesn't have anything to do with form switching. Her Q in League has her lance break into segments a bit, which not only inspired the tether part of up B, but also inspired the neutral B, where she stabs her lance forward and then whips it back, launching enemies towards Rell. This would be the same in both modes, but I imagine it'd be a really interesting combo starter. For her final smash, it'd be a bit like Rosalina and Luma's.
Rell just brings in nearby enemies dealing damage as she does and then explodes out at the end. Overall, I think her gimmick of changing forms and leaving her totem around could be loads of fun, but
it's Rell. Nobody would really be that excited for Rell to make it into Smash. So what about a character who's definitely well known? Viego is such a very League of Legends style of fighter. He has invisibility, a stun, and a gimmick that just would not work in a competitive 1v1 scenario.
That all does not translate well into a fun Smash Bros. Character. Viego isn't a fun character in League either, but that just means that we have our work cut out for us.
It'd be a bit heavier than average, but overall just your typical humanoid sword fighter things. His normal attacks are fairly straightforward. He'd play like Ike, I imagine, but jumping straight into the special moves, his neutral B would be based off of his Q, like a slow, more powerful version of Marth's neutral B. A big chargeable stab forward, you could aim it to up or down. It wouldn't do as much shield damage, but it would just do a ton of damage and flinch them in place. His side B would take after his W, and would work a bit like Ganondorf's side B, but at that point he's just becoming a clone of Ganondorf, which I mean, isn't the worst thing to be fun-wise, but not very interesting to talk about. So there's a few key things that will set it apart from Ganondorf's side B. For one, when Viego hit somebody with his side B, he would grab onto them, and then you would be able to do a directional input to throw them away. Kind of like DK's forward throw that gives him 4 new throw options different than his normal ones. I imagine forward would just explode them forward, up would just pop them up, back would throw them back, and then down would be different depending on if you're in the air or on the ground. On the ground, you would just drop them down, exactly like Ganondorf's side B, but in the air, you would throw them down, like Captain Falcon's side B in the air, except it wouldn't spike them, just sort of throw them. And like the 2 side Bs that it takes after, you wouldn't be put into special fall if you land it. The second thing that makes it unique is that Viego would shoot out a ghost hand ahead of him. If that ghost hand hits the opponent, but not Viego itself, it would take after the parts of Ganondorf's and Captain Falcon's side Bs that we haven't taken from yet. On the ground, it would throw them up, and in the air, it would pull them down. However, you can't use this to just kill people off the ledge, because there is a limit to how far down it will go, and at the end of this limit, it just releases the opponent. As for Viego's up B, there's not actually an easy League equivalent to take after, so I'd imagine it just sort of be your typical sword slash upwards like Roy's, although maybe at the peak of the up B, Viego tosses opponents back downwards. It would only put you in special fault if you don't hit an opponent. As for down B, this is the really difficult one, invisibility. There's no invisibility in Smash Bros, but thankfully, Rivals of Aether has our back, with a character who shows us pretty much exactly how this could work. If you tap down B, it just creates a big circle of mist around you that Viego can't be seen behind. Although I imagine with Viego, if you hold down B, you could aim the mist and it would shoot out in a direction and make a bit more of a pill shape, more reminiscent of what it looks like in League. If you hit a surface with it, I don't think it would coat the surface with mist though. That might be a bit too overpowered, especially with how large some of the surfaces get in some stages. So now let's address the troublesome gimmick. When Viego kills an opponent, a wraith is left behind that he's able to take over, and then he becomes that character for a bit. Initially, I thought translating that over into Smash wouldn't really work, again because of competitive 1v1s, but Hero exists, so screw competitive 1v1s. I think it'd be a ton of fun in free-for-alls. When Viego gets a kill or an opponent Viego has recently hit with one of his special attacks dies, a wraith will spawn where the killing blow happened. After landing a special attack on someone, they have a bit of mist surrounding them, and if they die while that mist is still around, then they become a wraith. If Viego uses one of his special moves on that wraith, he becomes like a ghostly version of that character for a short duration. Neutral B is the only thing that Viego doesn't take, making him the opposite of Kirby in a sense, because Neutral B will return him back to his Viego form early. When transformed, Viego will temporarily restart at 0%, and any damage he takes in that mode will be applied back to him when he returns to Viego. But overall, I'd imagine it'd be a lot of fun. Maybe that's just because I know how to play every character loosely enough that I'd have a ton of fun with it, but I think it'd still be an enjoyable amount of chaos. However, this means the other part of Viego's ult is still left over to be his final smash. His final smash would be a sword slam into a big explosion, like Roy's final smash, but without the wind-up, and any enemies above 100% in this final smash would immediately be killed, and Viego will automatically take the form of the closest one. But overall, Viego was surprisingly straightforward. That clearly means that he wasn't enough of a challenge. So what about...
Zoomies! Woo!
Yeah, Yuumi. Yuumi might be one of the most impossible options I could choose. She has extreme dependence on allies, she has stuns, she has healing, she has shielding, she's a support, she's Yuumi, but luckily for Yuumi, there's a pretty big saving grace. Nora, the Yordle Enchantress. Yuumi was Nora's familiar, and while Nora's mysterious disappearance
Adios, Master.
was sort of the catalyst for Yuumi to do all of her Yuumi things, we can still bring her back for a Smash moveset because otherwise this would be impossible. And with her, it becomes pretty interesting. Nora would be a pretty average humanoid fighter in both weight and movement abilities, maybe a bit on the lighter side because she's a Yordle, but of course Yuumi would be way lighter and way floatier. Thing is, Nora can't actually attack for herself. She's just an AI that will run around, shield, dodge, and jump, and she's just there for Yuumi to attach herself to. When Yuumi attaches to Nora, you can control her movements, but you still attack as Yuumi, so your attacks are the same whether you're on or off her. Although Nora and Yuumi would actually have separate percentages like Nana and Popo, and when Yuumi is attached to Nora, Nora takes increased damage from attacks, while Yuumi takes decreased. And you could even kill her like you could with Luma or Nana. However, Nora wouldn't respawn until Yuumi's next stock, so Yuumi would be on her own if Nora dies. Yuumi's normal attacks would just be some short magical bursts, or maybe some tail slaps, some claw swipes, just small little cute attacks, you know? Yuumi's neutral B would take after her W, how you would get on and off of Nora. You'd have to be close enough to get on her, but you could get off her at any time, no matter what's happening. Without Nora around, Yuumi's neutral B wouldn't do anything, but that's also true with Rosalina and Luma's, so I think it's fine. For Yuumi's side B, it'd just be Nikita. How else would you translate Yuumi's Q? It's a projectile you shoot out and you can control it with the joystick. However, unlike Nikita, once you stop controlling it, it wouldn't just drop to the ground. I imagine it'd just continue in a straight line in the direction that you stopped at. Of course, that's only if you're attached to someone. If you're on your own, you wouldn't be able to control its direction at all. It'd just fire in a straight line from you. For Yuumi's down B, I want to combine two troublesome aspects of Yuumi's kit. Her E heals, and we know how that goes in Smash, and her passive gives a shield, which is redundant. So I wanted to combine the concepts of those into one easy down B. Something that might fit would be like a counter, but hold on, that's not what her down B should be. I know that's not interesting. So instead, I thought it'd be a bit more like Hero's Bounce or Fox's Shine. Actually, that's kind of more cringe, but it wouldn't be nearly as strong as either of those, because unlike Shine, you'd be able to move while it's active, and unlike Bounce, you wouldn't have to rely on RNG or mana. So to make up for that, any stronger projectiles would be able to break through it and hit you regardless. But something neat, I think, but a cool aspect of it could be that if you're attached to Nora and you use down B, the shield will go onto Nora, so even if you unattach from her, Nora would still be shielded for the duration of however long it lasts. That'd be a way to more proactively protect her while you aren't directly on top of her. But now we're out of things directly within League gameplay, so we know outside of gameplay that Yuumi teleports using the pages of her book, which to me just sounds like her up B would be a short-range teleport up B like Mewtwo or Palutena, so that was actually pretty simple there. Yuumi's final smash would just be a big beam ahead of her that would deal a ton of damage and knock away opponents in the air and stun opponents on the ground. I know I said easy to hit stuns aren't ideal for Smash, but there are actually a few final smashes that do that, and they're usually underpowered unless you have a big slow follow-up move to hit with, which
I did it! I knocked it over!
Yuumi doesn't have, so I think that'd be fine for a final smash. Overall, translating characters from the most love-hate relationship game into the most love-love relationship game was not as impossible as it seemed. Really, it feels like it'd be possible and fun to make a Smash moveset for every character in League. I won't, but I might do this again sometime with some others.